Alrighty then, what's up guys? Silver's came up with another live stream. And literally back to back live streams. So welcome. We're just scramming us in on a tight situation. So, wish I would have figured out that was the problem sooner. So that then I could, fix it. I would have started it a lot quicker here. I wouldn't have been such on a crunch. If you know what I mean. But yeah. So. There we go. So, pin message as always in the chats. Now that we fixed the issue. We're going to get started in it right away though. Every minute is hurting. So, check out Dan Review's channel. Link is in the description for his channel, as well as his playlist for his series. That will also be in the description as well. All credit goes to him showing some love. So, that's not where I want to put it. Okay. Hopefully I don't have to abort it. I hope I don't. Like I said, I'm just jumping right into it right away. So subscribe to Dan. Like, subscribe, appreciate it. I hope I didn't start too late.
Season 2, Episode 5, Take My Hand. In the future, we see a house on fire. As we zoom out more, we see all of the suburban estates is on fire. Currently, Haley starts walking away and Blake says, "Man, I just hope Dave understands." Haley turns around with a shocked look on her face. But she needs to act normal, so she says, in a slightly panicked voice, "Well, I can't wait to meet him at some point." Blake then says, "I'm kind of tired. I'm gonna go to sleep now. Thanks for letting me take the couch for the night." Haley is still shocked, but she says, Yeah, of course."
Okay. Interesting. Very good question there, Dan. I'm hoping I can scram your thing in. We're kind of close. I'm going to cap.
We then see Gary and about 20 other men, and they are spying on the suburban estates. And then Gary says, "Look at this place. They are all sitting in their little houses like a bunch of rich folks. They are just practically begging for someone to kill them. Lucky for them, they have themselves some house guests."
Oh, if I make something to eat, I'm still going to be listening and paying attention. I might just quickly make something here. Enjoyment.
Flashback to the first days of the Reanimated. We see the world breaking down. People breaking into cars, burning down buildings, and doing whatever the hell they want. But most of all, the dead are coming back and eating people alive.
Crazy. Chaos on the stand.
As we see the riots, we see Haley and Lincoln's two kids, Ryan and Macy, in the back of the military truck after being separated from Lincoln. Haley's heart is pounding because by the look of the world surrounding her from the outside of that truck, she doesn't know if she's ever going to see her husband again.
That's crazy.
Ryan is talking to his mom, Haley, in the back of the truck, and he asks her, "Is Daddy coming to the refugee camp too?" Haley says, "Of course, baby, he will." One of the military men says to Ryan, "Don't worry, kid. We're gonna take you, your sister, and your mom to a safe place." Haley interrupts and says, "Don't talk to my son." Luke takes off his helmet and is revealed to be one of the soldiers, and he says, "Look, we are here to help you." Haley says, "You took my husband and my children's father away from them. That's not how you help people." Luke says, "Look, we have jobs to do, and your job is simple: surviving."
Oh. Damn. That's crazy. Nah.
Currently,
Interesting flashback. Not bad. Pretty good.
1 hour later, we see Lincoln coming back from talking with Tom, and he walks back home to see Haley sitting on the porch, and she looks a little bit freaked out, and Lincoln walks up to her and asks, "Hey, I thought you'd be asleep. Are you alright?" Haley says, "I think we might have a problem with Blake." And Lincoln would say, "What kind of problem?" Haley takes a deep breath and says, "When you left, I was speaking with him, and Lincoln says, "What is it?" Haley says, in a scared manner, "He comes from Dave's group."
Yeah, Haley's perspective. Yeah.
Lincoln looks pissed off and asks, "He said this to you?" Haley says, "Yes, he talked about his leader and how if he doesn't get back to his group that's led by someone named Dave, that he might get in trouble. Doesn't that sound like Dave to you?" Lincoln rubs his head in frustration and says, "Look, we don't know what we're dealing with here with the Vipers, but if Dave wants to try something, we'll handle it." Haley whispers to make sure that Blake doesn't hear her and says, "What about Blake?" Lincoln says, "I'm gonna keep my eye on him. He's a good kid, but just in case, I want you to get some sleep for a few hours, and we'll figure this out in the morning, alright?" Haley says, "You and Tom were almost killed today, and you spent hours trying to get back here on foot. You should be the one getting rest." Lincoln says, "I'm fine. Don't worry about me." Haley kisses Lincoln and then goes back into the house to get some sleep.
Interesting. Yeah, you probably should get some sleep.
1 hour later. The residents are asleep. The streets are completely empty, and we see Lincoln is still sitting on the porch, fighting to stay awake. And he's just watching the night sky. Out of nowhere, we see one of the houses across the street blow up. Lincoln quickly jumps up, and Haley wakes up as well, and the kids, and Blake, and everyone inside of the community.
God damn.
Mark is on guard, and we see a bunch of men pull up in some trucks, and Gary steps out, and Mark says, "Stop right there! If you come any closer, I'll shoot!" Gary says, "Can someone kill this guy? He's annoying the fuck out of me." Then one of Gary's men shoots Mark in the head, and he falls off the wall.
Oh, damn. fuck, bro. That's crazy.
We see Mark slowly suffering and die, and then Gary and his men blast through the gates.
Jesus. So much for a night night. Nice night. Damn.
Gary and the men quickly drive through the gates and into the community.
That's crazy. What a turn twist. Jesus.
Lincoln is running into the house and saying, "Haley, kids, get your things, we gotta get out of this house right now." Haley says, "What the hell is going on?" Lincoln would say, "I don't know, we're under attack." And everyone gets their things and quickly gets out of the house. We see everyone running in the streets. We see the trucks driving in and brutally killing residents. As Lincoln, Haley, the kids, and Blake are all running through the streets, we see the houses getting blown up right in front of them.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Outside the walls, we see a bunch of Vipers throwing grenades over the walls.
Damn.
We see Tom made it out of this house, and he meets up with Lincoln and the others in the street. Tom says, as they're running, "We gotta fight these men." Lincoln says, "We gotta get the kids to safety first." They keep running down the streets, and they find Luke and Wesley. Luke says, "This place is gonna fall. If we stay here, we die." Wesley yells and says, "This is the place that I built." Lincoln says, "Wesley, this whole place is gonna be obliterated soon." Luke says, "I know one way out of this place." Lincoln asks, "Where?" And Luke says, "Come on."
Damn. I mean, hey, if you want to leave him here, do that. If you want to say that's stupid.
We continue to see civilians being shot, and they're trying to get away, but we see that the Vipers are cleaning house in the suburban estates. We see a bunch of the families are with Lincoln and the rest, and they follow Luke to the very other side of the suburban estates. And we see Luke open up the latch of an underground sewer tunnel. If you keep going down the left side and you go down that way, about roughly 10 minutes, you'll make it outside of the walls. Lincoln says, "Why didn't we know about this?" Wesley interrupts and says, "We only use it for situations like this, you deaf fuck." Lincoln would say to his kids, "You just stay with mommy, okay? You guys are gonna go somewhere safe." Haley says, "You're not coming with us?" Wesley interrupts and says, "Oh, fuck no. We aren't leaving this place like this." Lincoln looks back at Tom and nods at him, and then says to Wesley, "Me, Tom, Blake, and you," meaning Wesley, "are gonna fight these men." Haley looks worried, but Lincoln says, "Listen, if this place falls, these Vipers will still be on our trail. It's better to deal with them now." Luke says, "I'll get the kids out safe, I promise you that." And Wesley can't help but notice that Luke is saying these things to Lincoln and not him anymore. Lincoln says to Luke, "Take them to the cabin. It's far enough away from here, you'll have a better chance of survival if you take them there. There's still hopefully some supplies there if we're lucky." Luke says, "You got it. Let's go."
What is it, cowardly or
We then see Luke leading everyone through the sewers and leading the families that are left out of there. Ryan asks, "Is Daddy going to be at the cabin with us too?" Haley says in a slightly scared voice, "Of course he will, baby. There's nothing to be afraid of."
Oh man. Oh, I think we are just gonna scram it in. Just gonna scram it. You might have to see me get up and change.
Flashback.
Maybe. I'll still keep.
We see the military men arriving at the base, and we see Haley and the kids walk out.
It's a tight scram, but it'll work.
Luke goes up to his boss, Wesley, and says, "We got as many of the little ones as we could. We're bringing them to the refugee camp, right?" Wesley says, "No, change of plans." He pulls out a piece of paper and says, "The city has ordered us to kill anybody standing, friendly or not friendly." Luke whispers, "You can't kill innocent little kids. They are all hungry and exhausted. And now we're just gonna kill them all when it's done and pretend like we didn't?" Wesley says, "It's not my call anymore." Luke would say, "You're right. It's not your call. Luke would tell all the families to get back into the trucks. Haley and the kids would be one of those families. We see Luke is about to drive away, and Wesley says, "Hang the fuck on here." Luke says, "No, I don't want to hear it. You've crossed the line with this shit." Wesley says, "Where the hell are you going to take these people?" Luke says, "I'm going to take them back to the suburban estates. There's new houses that were built. They haven't even been sold yet, for God's sakes." Wesley says, "I hope you know what the hell you're doing, soldier." Luke says, "I do. I'm saving lives that you can't." We then see Wesley get into another one of the military trucks and drives behind them, and he's going to follow them to the suburban estates. Luke rolls his eyes and starts driving away and out of the city.
Damn. Well, good man. He's got heart. I'll deal with that. He's trying.
A few hours later, Luke is driving along with the other soldier in the passenger seat that says to Luke, "Hey, you did the right thing, soldier. When this thing is over, I'm sure people will be talking about it all over the city. I know for damn sure you'll be in the paper about this. You saved a bunch of families. You should be proud of yourself." Yeah. Luke says, "Thanks, sir. But I have a feeling that the dead, it might be around longer than we think." Haley says, "I gotta find my husband somehow." Luke says, "I'm sorry about that. We had to get out of the city. If we didn't, we would all be dead right now. Just focus on your kids and making sure that they survive." Haley looks devastated in the thought that she may never see Lincoln again. The soldier in the passenger seat says, "Luke, we're almost there."
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Currently, Luke, Haley, and the others make it outside of the sewers and far away from the suburban estates. Luke says, "Come on, let's go find that cabin."
Yeah. Make something real quick here. I'm gonna keep listening though.
Flashback. We see them arriving at the suburban estates, and Haley looks amazed by it. The kids still look scared, and Haley says to Ryan and Macy, "Take my hand." Currently, Luke says, "Come on, let's go find that cabin." And Haley looks at Ryan and Macy and says, "Take my hand." Back at the suburban estates, Lincoln, Tom, Blake, and Wesley are in the armory getting some guns and getting ready to go out there and fight. Wesley is loading his gun and says, "Now Lincoln, don't fuck this up. Just listen to what the hell I tell you to do, and this should go well." Lincoln would load up his gun and he would say, "And if you're not a dick to your fighters, maybe I'll listen to you." Tom says, "We don't have time for this shit. Let's go."
Damn. Savage. But he's probably right though.
We see Lincoln, Tom, Blake, and Wesley. Wesley says, "Split up. Find these people. Don't take a single prisoner." Then they all scatter.
Wow. That's crazy.
We see the fires burning. House is on fire, and we see Tom with his machine gun, and he spots a few of the men across the street. Tom shoots two of the men, and the other three fire back at him. Tom takes cover behind a house, and the men try to shoot him. Then two other men are about to come up behind Tom behind the house. Tom doesn't see them coming, and out of nowhere, the two men get killed by Blake. Tom says in a panic, "Nice job, kid." Tom says, "We gotta get that truck. We gotta stop them from being able to get out of here." Blake says, "Let's go."
Damn, man. Intense. W's though. W's for real.
We see Wesley kill 5 of the guys from behind in the street with his machine gun. Then out of nowhere, Wesley gets jumped by a Viper, and the man body slams Wesley on the ground and says, "You're the prick who runs this shit show, aren't you?" Wesley is struggling to get up, and the man points a gun to Wesley's head, and says, "You're the man we've been looking for." The man is about to shoot Wesley, and then we hear someone say, "I think it's me you're looking for." The man turns around, and Lincoln stabs him in the throat and says, "Don't worry. Chris and your friends will be joining you real soon." The man falls to his death, and Wesley says, "I didn't need your help, Lincoln." Lincoln says, "Oh, I can tell by how much you were holding your own there." Wesley says, "Fuck off, Lincoln."
Damn. Well, you would have been a dead man, Wesley, if you didn't help me there. You helped him.
We see a few men are left behind their truck. Tom and Blake are firing at them, and Blake says to Tom he's out of ammo. Tom says, "Me too." And all of a sudden, the last 3 men get killed by Lincoln and Wesley from behind, and Lincoln yells out to Tom and Blake, "It's over! Come on out!" Tom and Blake meet up back with Lincoln and Wesley, and Tom asks, "Is that everyone?" Lincoln says, "Of this group, I think so."
So, damn. That's crazy. Flashback there.
Lincoln says, "We need to go. Find our people and figure out what the hell we're gonna do next." And Wesley says, "This was my home. I built all of this, and because of you and Tom, they came back and destroyed it." Lincoln walks up to him and says, "Well, you've got a choice to make. You can stay here and die a slow death, or you can smarten the fuck up and come with us and do the smart thing." Lincoln, Tom, and Blake start walking out of the community, and Wesley looks at his community and he notices that it's completely lost, and he decides to follow Lincoln, Tom, and Blake and leave the suburban estates with them.
Damn. That was a smart thing. Yeah. I figured it would be no more. Made sense to me.
We see the sun is about to rise, and we see Lincoln, Tom, Blake, and Wesley walk out of the community and parting ways with the suburban estates.
Damn.
What they don't realize is Gary is still alive, and he's right on their trail.
Of course. Of course the asshole is. Why wouldn't he be?
We see Lincoln stop, and he says, "I'm gonna take a piss." And he says to Tom, Blake, and Wesley, "Go on, I'll catch up." Tom, Blake, and Wesley keep walking up ahead. Lincoln finishes taking a piss, and he hears something in the woods. And Lincoln thinks he's just losing it after all the fighting and death. And he says, "Lincoln, man, get your shit together."
Oh, jeez. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. I'm nervous. Hope something doesn't happen to him. Jesus. Got me on edge.
Gary spots Lincoln. Lincoln gets tackled by Gary. Gary puts his hands on Lincoln's neck and starts choking him. Tom and the others hear this and start yelling out for Lincoln. Gary is choking Lincoln, but then all of a sudden, Lincoln gets the upper hand and headbutts him to the ground. And then Gary falls to the ground. Lincoln is also on the ground, and Gary quickly reaches for the axe.
Oh, shit. Come on, Lincoln.
He picks it up and tries to kill Lincoln. Gary gets up and is about to finish him off, when out of nowhere, Gary gets a knife shoved in the back of his head and through his mouth, and it's Tom who brutally has killed Gary.
Take that, fucker. Brutal. Lift Caleb though. Fire.
Tom helps Lincoln up, and Lincoln says, "Thanks, brother." Lincoln pulls out his machete and slowly starts cutting Gary's head off, and he tells Blake, "You mind doing a little mission for me?" Blake says, "Of course. What do you need?" Lincoln brutally hands Gary's head over to Blake and says to him, "Put this where they'll find it." Then Tom picks up the axe off the ground and puts it over his shoulder, and Lincoln, Tom, and Wesley walk off, and Blake is just standing there with Gary's head in his hands.
Wow. Rip Gary off. Hey, he deserved it. He was an asshole.
Later that night, two of the Vipers are patrolling the streets for the night. We see a bag in the back of a pickup truck that is dripping blood on the ground. They open the bag and notice Gary's reanimated head in the bag. And the man says to the other Viper, just wait until Chris gets a look at this.
Yeah. Damn. Let's stop. Good episode. Good episode. I'm gonna start the 6th episode right now, though. I have to because we're pushing it. Very good episode, though. 8.5 out of 10. Very good. Finale next. Yeah, 8.5 out of 10, man. It was really good. And it sped along very well. The action was solid. The flashbacks were solid. It all collided nicely.
Season 2, Episode 6, The Ruling, the mid-season finale.
If I got time, I'll go more in depth.
In the future, we open with a river filled with blood. We see some backpacks in the water and a little teddy bear floating down this trail of blood. And we see hands reaching out of the water.
Crazy.
We see Wesley. He sees a deadhead in a car and he opens up the door and kills it with his knife. We hear Lincoln say from far, "You find anything?" Wesley says, "A rifle. That's about it." Lincoln and Tom walk down the road and Tom says, "We can't be far from the cabin." Lincoln says, "Nah, it can only be about another half an hour walk away from here." And then Tom says, "Let's see if this thing still runs." He goes and tries the car and it doesn't work. Then Lincoln checks another truck up ahead. And luckily, the truck starts up, and Lincoln notices that it has less than half a tank of gas. And he calls over to Tom and Wesley and says, "This one's perfect, boys." Tom gets out of the car and he says, "How come every time I try to start a car, it's like, nope, sorry, we're dead. But then every time you try to start up a car, it's like, vroom, vroom." Lincoln says, "Well, you know what they say. The magician never reveals his secrets." Tom says, "Very funny. Let's go."
For this episode, LOL. Oh, really? Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Crazy, crazy. Oh, that episode was really good, though. True.
We see Lincoln, Tom, and Wesley driving back to the cabin. And we see Lincoln and Tom in front, and Wesley is in the back of the truck. And he's looking out into the fields. And then we cut to inside the truck, and we see Lincoln and Tom. And Tom says, "I'm glad we made it." Lincoln says, "Barely." Tom says, "The Vipers are a lot harder to take down than I thought, though." Lincoln says, "All we need is the right plan. Maybe somehow, some way, we find out some of their weaknesses and use it against them." Tom says, "Yeah, but what would that be?" Lincoln says, "I don't know." As we see Lincoln and Tom are still talking, we see Wesley in the back of the truck, and he's looking out at the fields as they drive by. Back at the factory, we see the two men that were patrolling drive the pickup truck back to the factory.
I think it's going to be a crazy finale. I think it will be. pretty crazy.
We see Chris and his lieutenant named Alexander. Chris asks him, "You got something for me?" Alexander says, "You're gonna like this one." He then takes Gary's head out of the bag, and Chris starts laughing his head off and says, "Well, look at this sorry-ass maniac. Couldn't handle the pressure of doing a simple fucking job. Anyway, you have anything else for me?"
Damn.
Alexander says, No, that's all we found out there. Chris asks, so they left it. Alexander says, yeah, I'm sure they wanted us to find it. Chris says in a sarcastic manner, no, really? You think they just left it right outside a patrolling location for us to say, that's sad. Jesus Christ, grow a fucking brain a little bit for once at least. Alexander says, apologies, boss. Chris would look at Gary's head and says, of two evils, it is always best to vote for the least hypocritical. Alexander says, I don't understand, boss. Chris says, it means we're going to pay Mr. Lincoln a visit. And we see Alexander look a little scared about what's about to happen.
Damn.
Back at the military base, we see Kezia doing some target practice. Dave walks up to her and says, hey, they could really use some help on guard today. Kezia would nearly get a bullseye and look back at Dave and say, my guard shift is tonight, asshole. Dave says, yeah, I'm aware, but they just need your help for about an hour. Kevin is sick and he's not going to be able to come today, unfortunately. So, if it's not asking too much, Kezia says, no, it's fine. Dave says, all right, thanks, darling. And he starts walking away, and Kezia asks him, you ever shoot a bow and arrow before? Dave says, my dad was always pretty good at it. He used to really be into hunting quite a bit, but I never knew how. Kezia says, come try. I got 4 arrows left. Dave says, all right. We notice Dave misses all 4 of them, and Kezia is trying to hold back her laugh as Dave says, oh, shut up over there. Kezia says, maybe I should just stick to the bow and arrow. Dave says, for mine and your sake, it's better if you do. Dave walks away, and Kezia starts heading towards the guard post for her shift.
Interesting. That's kind of funny. Dave a couple episodes.
Later that day, we see Lincoln, Tom, and Wesley pull up to the cabin, and we see Luke open up the door with a smile. And he says to Haley, they're here. Haley and the kids' faces light up, and they run up to Lincoln and hug him. We see Haley ask him, are you alright, babe? Lincoln doesn't answer the question and says, they're dead. The men that attacked us, they're gone. Luke says, what about the rest? Lincoln says, yeah, that's what I want to talk to you all about. We'll stay here for the night just to figure things out of what we're going to be doing next. But until then, and he looks at everyone and all the remaining families from the suburban estates and his people and says, I want 3 guards on at all times, making sure that no vipers try to come in here. We're going to all ride this out until tomorrow, and in the morning, we'll begin our new journey. Luke asks, where? Lincoln looks back at him and says, somewhere else. A few hours later, the sun is about to set, and we see Chris and 50 other Vipers drive into a burned-out suburban estate. Chris looks around at the destruction and says, they died quick. The others got away. One of his men says, they're all dead. Wasn't expecting that so soon. Chris says, nah, they got away. They can't be far away from here. We see Luke and Tom are both on guard for the night, and we see everyone inside of the cabin, and we see the families are sitting inside trying to stay warm, but not Ryan. Haley notices Ryan is sitting down and drawing something. Haley says, hey baby, you should probably try to stay warm, and Ryan says, almost done. There. Haley asks, let's see. Ryan shows her the first drawing, and it's a picture of their house that they lived in. And Haley says, that's great, honey. and Ryan flips the page and shows her the other one that he drew. And she notices it's a picture of their house on fire. And Haley looks a little upset by seeing that, and Ryan says, "What do you think?" Haley quickly snaps out of it and says, That's great, baby. Now come and warm up for a bit."
Poor kid.
We see Lincoln and the others sitting in the cabin, and Tom comes in and says to Lincoln, "Hey, buddy, Luke is on guard just for a few minutes, but I don't mean to intrude on a night with your family that you're trying to spend, but Wesley's been missing for a few hours now." Lincoln gets up and says, "What? What was he doing last?" Tom says, "I don't know. He said he was going to go out for hunting, and that was hours ago now. So I really don't know what to think." And Lincoln looks back at Haley and the kids and says, "We got to go find him." Haley says, No, it's fine. Nathan's still going to be on guard while you guys are gone anyway. It's fine." Lincoln kisses Haley and gives her his machete for protection and says, "Take this, all right? We'll be back soon." Tom gives Lincoln a rifle and says, "Let's do this fast." Lincoln and Tom start walking away from the cabin, and Luke runs up with a pistol in his hands and says, "You got room for one more?" Tom says, "Hell yeah." Back at the military base, we see Kezia on her way back to her place for the night, and she walks past Dave, and Kezia notices some blood on Dave's hands, and she pretends to not notice. Once Dave walks down the road enough, Kezia walks into that building that Dave just came out of, a little suspicious, and she says, "Hello? Is anybody there?"
Don't tell me it's Wesley, is it?
She then sees Sydney tied to a chair. Kezia looks shocked, and Sydney looks at her and says, "Now who the hell are you?" Sydney says, "No answer? Well, if you're not going to speak, can you do me a favor? Can you tell that piece of shit out there to back off for a little while? My head is killing me." Kezia asks, "Dave gave you those bruises?" Sydney says, "Who else would have?" "Let me guess, you're one of the many few people he's lied to, huh? One of his believers?" Kezia says, "What are you here for? Are you a viper?" Sydney laughs and says, "No. But from what your leader told me, you all are getting slowly killed by them, right?" Kezia says, wait. What's your involvement with any of this?" Sydney says, "Your son of a bitch for a leader almost killed me and my friends when we were trying to just go out on the road and we were trying to survive like normal human beings do these days. We won, and he lost, but not before he brutally hung one of our people, and we thought we killed him after the fight. But he survived and told me in order to keep his power, or the reason that God kept him alive on this earth, or some bullshit like that he found a reason to stay alive, apparently because of some girl named Kezia." Kezia interrupts and says, "I'm Kezia."
Damn. Learning the truth about Dave. Oh, yeah.
Sydney says, "Ah, shit. Well, you're not gonna like this. Dave told me that when he took over this group, he killed a man named William and a bunch of his men, just so he could take over from him, and then, just to add to his lies, make people like you, I'm afraid, feel sorry for him so that he can swoop in and become the hero that everyone thinks he is. And I'm sorry to tell you, girl, but you've been drinking the Kool-Aid."
Yeah.
Kezia looks like she wants to break down, but she quickly exits the building and steps outside of the building. She starts crying because now she knows the truth about Dave and that she's been lied to this whole time.
Well, sometimes the truth hurts, but at least you were told. You know?
We see Lincoln, Tom, and Luke walking in the woods with their guns, and Lincoln says, "If we don't find him in an hour, I'm going back. The prick doesn't deserve over an hour of my time. I'm only doing this because I don't want to see anybody die today." Tom says, "I'm sure this is just him being a stubborn prick and he doesn't want to come into the cabin like a little 4-year-old. Lincoln asks Luke, "You've known him the longest. Does anything come to mind of where he may have gone?" Luke says, "Well, I was thinking maybe he went back to the suburban estates. He didn't want to leave it before, and maybe he still can't." Lincoln says, well, Jesus, that place is way too damn far for me to go all the way back there on foot just to find him. He might be an asshole, but I don't think he's an idiot. Lincoln says, alright, this is what we're gonna do. You two, meaning Tom and Luke, take left, search the general area and radio back if you find anything. I'll take right. We'll cover more ground that way. Tom says, alright, if you get into trouble, holler. Lincoln says, alright, meet me back in the cabin in an hour, with or without Wesley. 10 minutes later, we see Tom and Luke walking in the woods, and Luke says, fuck, it's getting cold. Winter's on the way soon. I can feel it. Tom doesn't answer, and Luke says, what's going on? Tom says, just bad memories. Luke asks, what bad memories? Tom says, of being out here in the woods at night looking for a missing person? I don't know. Something about this feels off. Luke says, forget about it, man. Let's keep going.
I can get that about bad memories, especially if you've done it many times or been through it already.
We see everyone asleep in the cabin. We see Nathan, one of the guards, is on guard for the night. When out of nowhere, Chris shoots Nathan from a distance, and he tells his men, spread out. We see the Vipers surrounding the cabin, and Chris gives them a signal, and they all shoot a few bullets in the air to get Haley and the others' attention.
God damn. Can't get catch a break for shit.
Haley, the kids, and the other families all wake up and quickly exit the cabin. When Haley steps out outside of the cabin, she sees Chris and a bunch of his Vipers standing there with guns pointed at them.
Shouldn't have came up. Well, I don't know. Maybe that was maybe I had no choice. I don't know.
We see Chris step out. Haley notices dead Nathan on the ground. And Chris says, well, pardon the disturbance, folks, but I'm just here to ask a simple question. Haley says, you had to kill someone on your way in here? Chris says, the prick was in my way. I made it quick, so you really should thank me for that. Haley looks mad, and Chris asks, so, do any of you fine people know a man that goes by the name of Lincoln? Haley looks a bit freaked out, and then Ryan says, that's my dad. Chris smirks and says, he is? Well, that's a fascinating development. Man, if we're not living in a world gone mad, I don't know what this world is. You see, we were just on our way to see him. Any idea where he might be?
What you did there.
We
Nice
see no one in
slipping.
the crowd to give him an answer, and
Nice
Chris says,
slipping.
okay, fine. We're gonna move on to plan C now. Load them up. Haley looks super worried because everyone is being taken by the Vipers.
Insanity.
We see Lincoln walking in the fields, and he notices some footprints on the ground that makes him a little bit on edge.
That's crazy.
Then he hears a gun click, and you hear Wesley's voice say, hands up, asshole. Lincoln looks pissed, and Wesley says, put your gun down. Now. Lincoln asks, what is this? Wesley says, you know what this is. Lincoln says, oh, do I now, Wesley? Wesley says, this is never going to be over until one of us falls. Fortunately for me, I'll live to see my people, you hear that? My people live years down the road from now. Lincoln says, after everything I did, I could have let you die in that fire the other day, but I gave you the option to come with us. I guess that was the biggest mistake I ever made. Wesley says, you want to hear about mistake, Lincoln? Mistake would be letting you people in, and you and Tom bring the Vipers right to our doorstep and destroy everything I built from day one of the end of the world. You did that, Lincoln, not me.
They would have probably came and destroyed it anyway. I'm sure they would have.
Lincoln says, well, guess fucking what, Wesley? All your people can't fucking stand you now. Because you didn't grow the fuck up and lead your goddamn people like a good, decent person would do. And you're so hell-bent on killing me, you can't even accept that you're the one that truly fucked up. Take fucking responsibility, old man. Wesley says, you're a goddamn murderer, Lincoln. All those kids, all those families that burned alive, that is because of you. Lincoln says, people always judge me for doing the right thing. Well, man, I gotta tell ya, those days are fucking over. And we see Lincoln is about to try something when all of a sudden, we hear the sound of a gunshot, and then we see blood pouring out of Wesley's neck, and Wesley drops his gun to the ground.
Ha! Well, yeah, you deserve it. They would have destroyed the community regardless, Fred. They don't give a damn.
Wesley falls to his knees and looks at Lincoln in the eyes with pure anger, but then Lincoln turns around to see who just killed him. We see Luke standing there with his gun, and we see Tom right behind him. And Lincoln looks at Luke, completely surprised, and Luke flips the gun over and hands it to Lincoln. Lincoln looks at Wesley and says, as he watches him die, we're all murderers now. Lincoln points Luke's gun to Wesley's head, and finishes the job by putting a bullet in his head. Lincoln, Tom, and Luke stand over Wesley's dead body, and Lincoln looks at both of them and says, let's get back. And Tom and Luke start walking off, and we see Lincoln take Wesley's gun, his jacket, his hat, and leaves everything else behind with him. As well, Lincoln leaving his past behind.
Again, he deserved it. He was a weak leader.
Tom says, you coming? Lincoln puts the hat on and says, yeah.
Him thinking that they wouldn't have came and took what he had anyway, regardless if Lincoln was there, is crazy.
We see Haley tied to a tree, without her kids, without anyone. And we see Haley, and she is surrounded by the Vipers. And Chris comes up to her and says, welcome back. Haley, in a panic, says, where are my kids? Where are my kids? Chris laughs and says, your kids are helping me prepare what Lincoln's gonna do next. Haley says, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Chris says, your kids are going to help me teach Lincoln his mistakes he's made as a leader. Meanwhile, you are going to help me with what comes next. And then the men untie her from the tree and put her in the back of one of the vehicles. And Chris and the Vipers drive off with Haley captured.
Jesus. That is crazy.
Lincoln, Tom, and Luke are walking through the swamps, and they're on their way back to the cabin. And Tom says to Lincoln, you know, I think you were right before. About finding their weaknesses and let their weaknesses break them. That's what I need to start doing. Not letting my weaknesses from my past dictate what I'm doing now. Lincoln says, we're gonna have to do things that we'll probably never imagine we would do before. Tom says, damn right. And I'm ready for whatever comes next.
Oh shit.
We see they're about to cross the swamps when all of a sudden, Lincoln notices blood running down the river, and he notices little backpacks, arms and legs following down the river. Lincoln and the others are bothered by the smell, but then Lincoln notices Ryan's backpack is one of the backpacks in the river, and then he starts to panic. As he turns around, he sees all of the families and all of the remaining residents of the suburban estates' heads hanging off the trees. And Luke says, oh my God. Lincoln looks at all these heads with pure anger, but then he notices his kids. Ryan and Macy's heads are hanging off the tree, and Lincoln falls to his knees and starts crying as he watches his children's heads hanging off the tree. and painted on the tree in children's blood says, "You shouldn't have run."
Wow. That's great. Damn. That's great. To be continued. Wow, that's how you end. Oh, that's. I'm not gonna cap. It almost got a tear out of me. I'm not gonna. Yeah, go. That. That's crazy. Wow, bravo, man. Bravo, man. That's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah. Truly.
We see a man walking in the streets with a pistol. He then notices an old covered bridge.
Yeah, you definitely practically got a tear out of me. I'm not gonna get it.
We see the man walking to the covered bridge.
To get a tear out of me on something like this, that's you're doing something good. I'll tell you what.
We see the man look at the hole in the bridge from where Tom and Dave fell, and the man gets contacted on his walkie-talkie. He then picks it up and he says, "Just on a supply mission at the moment." And the person on the walkie-talkie would say, "Miles, we're counting on you to bring something useful back to the boss by the end of the day."
Oh,
We see Miles go back into his pickup truck and starts it up and starts driving down the road. And we see that Miles is now a part of the Vipers.
that's crazy. Honestly, oh, oh yeah. Oh god damn it. Bastard too. That son of a bitch. Well, whoop. Wow. Um, damn. That was yeah, you were not, yeah, you pretty much got a tear out of me. I'm not gonna cap, man. That's crazy. That's insane. Um, W's for real though. I'm not gonna cap. I'll give it a 9.5. That was really good. That was really good. 2A is done with. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll give it a 9.5 out of 10. That was damn good. So episode 5, 8.5. That's episode 9.5. It's damn good. Damn good. Damn good, man. Damn good. Project got a tear out of me. That's crazy. So, like the flashbacks. Wait, is this one? I don't remember if I had. Well, more of the explaining, I should say, not flashbacks. The explaining. Because Kezia finding out the truth. That ending was crazy. Him killing well, his family being captured, crazy. Yeah, all of that was just nuts. Huh. Yeah, for real, for real. Yeah, that was a boldy risk. That was a boldy risk. Well, that's my rating on your episodes. Check out Dan Reviews, guys, and his playlist links are in the description. Show him some love. And check out the series for yourself. Truly, it is crazy, but it's good. So hit that like button. Would appreciate it. Man, on Warpath. Yeah, for real. For real. So yeah, very good episodes. Everything in it was beautifully done. Brutal, and I like the little slip in there with the word "combat." I love that. That was great. You definitely make me hate them even more than ever now, for real. So appreciate it. Thank you. I'm glad I was able to just sneak it in before I had to go in, because it's tight. So with further ado, though, I have to end it so I can get going. It's so that way that I'm not late. So, but more further content later tonight, so stay tuned for that. We got more far content on the way, so hit that like button, subscribe. You guys are going to be part of the Army. And I mentioned the name of oh yeah, of course. Hey, there's always ways to make it work, right? Yeah. So, alrighty, peace out. You guys go check them out. And hit that like button. We'll get about 7 or more likes. We will continue episodes 7 and 8 sooner rather than later. So definitely do stay tuned for those, of course. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Over and sign out. Peace. Have a good guys. Much love.